In the time it takes you to listen to this sentence, millions of dollars in illicit funds just crossed international borders.
Just like that.
Literally, there were no getaway cars, no shattered glass, no alarms blaring in the night. It was just a polite, instantaneous digital handshake between two banks located in completely different hemispheres.
Which is terrifying when you really think about it.
Right. So, welcome to the deep dive. For you listening today, we are setting out on a uniquely compelling mission. We're heading straight to the absolute front lines of the fight against global financial crime.
Yeah, and our lens for understanding this massive invisible war is actually a highly specialized piece of training architecture. We're dissecting the official course parameters for the ICA Specialist Certificate in Money Laundering Risk in Correspondent Banking.
Quite a mouthful.
It really is, but it's a level 2 specialist qualification. And honestly, examining it reveals the stark reality of how modern financial defense is actually waged on a daily basis.
Okay, let's unpack this because, we aren't looking at some introductory weekend seminar here.
No, not at all.
This is a globally recognized, heavily vetted qualification. It's awarded in association with Alliance Manchester Business School at the University of Manchester. The stakes embedded in this curriculum are incredibly high.
Yeah, because we're looking at the exact mechanisms designed to stop sanctioned entities, cartels, and corrupt regimes from funneling their money through the legitimate global economy.
Right, which naturally dictates the caliber of the professionals stepping into this arena. Like, this curriculum isn't built for outsiders, is it?
Oh, no, it targets professionals who are actively embedded in the trenches. We're talking about officers, analysts, and managers who are already handling AML.
Anti-money laundering.
Exactly. AML, transaction monitoring, and broader financial crime prevention. So these are individuals who literally stare at the digital matrix of global finance every single day.
Wow, they're the ones actually looking at the code and the wire transfers.
Yes, exactly.
But before we get into, the psychology of how they're trained, we kind of have to establish the battlefield itself. Looking at the syllabus for this course, it is intensely focused.
Very.
It covers essential AML concepts, the fundamentals of correspondent banking, regulatory frameworks, complex due diligence, monitoring protocols, and sanctions evasion. It's a lot.
It is a massive scope, yeah.
And reading through it, it made me realize that correspondent banking operates fundamentally differently than retail banking. I kind of came up with this analogy.
Oh, let's hear it.
So think of correspondent banking like a series of incredibly exclusive airport VIP lounges, where banks are essentially holding the doors open for other banks.
I like that. That analogy perfectly isolates the core vulnerability.
Based on the syllabus,
Yes.
what makes this specific VIP lounge area such a unique vulnerability for money laundering?
Well, the source material explicitly describes correspondent banking as a high-risk area, and it emphasizes the absolute need for robust due diligence as a risk control because, think about it, when a regional bank in one country lacks the infrastructure or the regulatory clearance to operate directly in another jurisdiction, it relies on a correspondent bank to clear its transactions.
So correspondent bank is the one managing that VIP lounge.
Exactly. But here is the critical friction point. The correspondent bank does not have a direct relationship with the individuals or the corporations actually moving the money.
Wait, really? They don't know who the end customer is?
Usually, no. They are entirely reliant on the respondent bank, the one sending the money, to have executed rigorous KYC and CDD protocols.
Know your customer and customer due diligence.
Right. They rely on them to do all that before the money ever even reaches the lounge door.
Okay, that feels like a massive blind spot.
It is.
If Bank A in London is processing $1 billion a day for Bank B in, an emerging market, Bank A is basically trusting that the bouncer at Bank B's club actually checked the IDs properly.
That's a great way to put it.
And if Bank B is sloppy, or worse, complicit, Bank A is suddenly laundering money for a sanctioned oligarch without even knowing it. How does an analyst sitting in London actually audit someone else's trust?
That specific challenge is the beating heart of this Level 2 certificate. The training pivots heavily on analyzing vulnerabilities and the money laundering risks inherent in the system.
Inherent risk.
Yes, a skilled analyst isn't just looking at the metadata of a single transaction. They're evaluating the entire regulatory environment of the respondent bank.
So they have to look at the big picture.
Absolutely. They have to assess the local laws governing that foreign bank, the strength of its internal compliance culture, its historical appetite for risk.
Wow.
If the respondent bank is operating in a region with notoriously lax corporate registry laws, the correspondent bank has to apply a radically different layer of friction to those funds.
Which brings up the sheer dizzying scale of this problem. When you look at the enrollment portal for this certificate, the geographic drop-down menu is just staggering.
Oh, it really is.
It spans from the Åland Islands to Afghanistan, all the way down to Zambia and Zimbabwe. It basically reads like a complete roster of the United Nations.
Because it has to. It's a stark reminder that financial crime is an entirely borderless enterprise.
Yeah, the money doesn't care about borders.
Exactly. A regulatory loophole in one nation's banking system is immediately weaponized to launder funds into a stronger, more stable economy. A vulnerability in Southeast Asia can compromise a clearinghouse in Frankfurt in milliseconds.
Mhm.
Therefore, the defensive architecture, the training frameworks, the risk typologies, they must be universally accessible. A compliance officer in Singapore has to speak the exact same analytical language as an auditor in Switzerland or South Africa.
Let's ground this in reality for a second. Imagine a complex web of shell companies, right?
Okay.
Say a mining conglomerate under heavy international sanctions sets up a front company in a loosely regulated jurisdiction. That front company opens an account with a mid-tier regional bank.
Classic setup.
Right. And then the mid-tier bank uses a major global correspondent bank to convert those funds into US dollars and push them into the global market. The correspondent bank only sees the mid-tier bank, not the sanctioned mining conglomerate.
And that is the exact scenario the syllabus prepares an analyst to dismantle.
Really? How do they even spot that?
Well, the training forces the analyst to look beyond the immediate respondent bank and evaluate the nested relationships. Are there downstream banks funneling money through the respondent bank?
Ah, I see.
The course modules covering sanctions and continuous monitoring are designed to teach these professionals how to build behavioral profiles.
So they're looking for patterns.
Exactly. If that mid-tier bank suddenly exhibits a spike in high-volume, round-dollar wire transfers from a high-risk sector like mining, the trained analyst knows to freeze the corridor, not just flag the individual wires.
Okay, so if the problem is this complex, deeply embedded in the architecture of international trade, how do you actually train someone who is already working 50 to 60 hours a week to spot it?
It's a huge challenge.
We are talking about professionals drowning in false positives and massive data sets. So let's look at the format of the course itself, because this is where I actually found myself pushing back on the premise.
Oh, how so?
Well, looking at the breakdown, it provides 20 ICA CPD hours.
Continuing professional development, yeah.
Right. And the timeline is aggressive. The documentation states it can be completed in as little as 4 weeks, though learners do have access for up to 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
But the final assessment, it is a single 1-hour online multiple-choice exam. The results are generated immediately, and you just download your certificate.
I see where you're going with this.
I have to be honest. Considering the sophistication of international money laundering rings, like cartels employing former intelligence officers, is a 1-hour multiple-choice test really enough to prove someone can defend the global banking system?
It sounds dangerously brief, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like a driving test for a fighter jet.
Well, what's fascinating here is that you have to factor in the cognitive baseline of the candidate taking that exam. We have to revisit who this is actually for.
Okay, fair point.
The documentation explicitly frames this as an opportunity to, quote, certify existing knowledge or to increase professional agility.
Right, it's not a beginner course.
Exactly. This is not foundational learning. You are not taking an undergraduate and teaching them the concept of fiat currency from scratch.
Ah, I see. It is an accelerant for people already in the fight.
Precisely. It's the opposite of a slow-burn academic seminar. These professionals are already executing transaction monitoring on a daily basis.
But they need an upgrade.
Right. Perhaps their institution is expanding its correspondent banking portfolio, or regulatory scrutiny in their region has suddenly tightened. They need to rapidly acquire and validate a highly specialized subset of risk typologies.
So they can apply them to their dashboard the very next morning.
Exactly. In adult education, especially in high-stakes regulatory environments, the goal is efficiency. It's about rapid synthesis.
That makes perfect sense, actually. A multiple-choice exam for a seasoned veteran isn't about rote memorization. It is about pattern recognition under pressure.
Yes. Can you instantly identify the critical failure point in a complex chain of cross-border transactions?
Right. Because when you are dealing with a subject as murky and deliberately obfuscated as global money laundering, you need the training delivery to be completely frictionless.
And that frictionless delivery allows the analyst to preserve their cognitive bandwidth for the actual threat. We see this reflected in the feedback from past students, too.
Oh yeah, the reviews.
Yeah, one notable evaluation highlighted the clear rules and the good layout of the platform itself. They aren't praising the aesthetics, they're praising how functional it is.
The tool is getting out of its own way,
Exactly, so the operator can just absorb the weaponized knowledge.
which is crucial.
Yeah.
You definitely do not want your training platform to be as convoluted as the trade-based money laundering scheme you're attempting to dismantle.
No, absolutely not.
The tool just needs to work. But acquiring specialized frictionless tools always comes with an investment. And passing that exam isn't the end of the journey.
Far from it.
It actually serves as an entry ticket into a much larger ecosystem. Which brings us to the actual cost of entry here.
Right, the financial commitment, it's structured in a very specific, tiered manner based on location.
Yeah, I was looking at that. The core investment is GBP 730, EUR 803, or USD 949. But there's a catch, and it's a really fascinating structural choice.
The membership requirement.
Exactly. Non-members must also pay a mandatory 12-month membership fee. That's an extra GBP 185, UR 204, or USD 241, respectively. You cannot just buy the course. You're required to buy into the network.
It forces a philosophical shift in how the learner approaches the material.
It reminds me of like buying a high-end software program, but being required to buy the annual subscription just to use it.
That's a very modern way to look at it.
Right. So for you listening, what exactly is the listener getting for that mandatory membership fee? Why can't an analyst just take the knowledge and leave?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, fighting financial crime is fundamentally a community effort. The syndicates laundering money are continuously sharing tactics, right?
Oh, for sure. They're on the dark web trading secrets every day.
Exactly. They are exploiting new digital assets and probing regulatory borders for weaknesses. The compliance professionals must operate with the same collective intelligence.
They need their own network.
Yes, and that mandatory fee unlocks an international network of over 30,000 members.
30,000 people whose sole professional mandate is to intercept dirty money. That is a formidable counterintelligence community.
It really is. It creates a vital feedback loop. Beyond the networking aspect, the fee grants access to a uniquely personalized ICA learning hub.
What's in the hub?
Well, the landscape of financial sanctions, for instance, can shift overnight based on geopolitical events. The hub provides weekly webinars covering the absolute latest industry developments, shifting regulatory postures, and emerging typologies. You also get discounts on future events.
Which means the mandatory membership isn't just a clever business model, it is an ongoing resource library.
Exactly.
And past students agree. One reviewer consistently praised the, quote, additional webinars and sources of information. They cited them as crucial tools for gaining a deeper understanding.
Because the theoretical knowledge provided in the 4-week sprint is merely the foundation, the ongoing membership provides the real-time intelligence feeds required to deploy that knowledge effectively.
Okay, so we have mapped out the terrain. We understand the specific VIP lounge vulnerabilities of correspondent banking, the aggressive, agility-focused format of the training, and the cost of buying into this continuous intelligence network.
The whole ecosystem.
Right. But the ultimate question for any professional qualification is application. Does this certificate actually change how people do their jobs on a daily basis?
The transition from theory to frontline execution is where the true value is proven.
And here's where it gets really interesting. I was struck by a specific, glowing review from a past graduate. Their actual job title is Financial Crime and Control, CDD Quality Assurance Analyst.
That is a very specific, very serious role.
Extremely. And they noted that they specifically used the course to review their own bank's correspondent banking relationships. They didn't just take the course for a resume boost, they took it and immediately used it to audit the borders of their own institution.
The terminology the graduate used is highly revealing, too. They specifically credited the practical insights and structured approach. We really need to dwell on that phrase, structured approach.
Because without a structure, an analyst is just staring at an ocean of transactions, waiting for an alert to flash red.
Exactly. A structured approach is the difference between being reactive and proactive. In a field overwhelmed by massive data sets and shifting international mandates, having just a theoretical grasp of AML concepts is wholly insufficient.
You need a system.
Right. A structured methodology means the analyst has a systematic framework for scoring jurisdictions, evaluating the respondent bank's executive leadership, and auditing their historical compliance record before the first dollar is ever cleared.
Wow. They aren't just looking at the money, they are mathematically modeling the risk of the institution moving the money.
Exactly.
They're building a risk matrix that dictates how much friction to apply to that specific VIP lounge. And executing that level of complex analysis, day in and day out, that has to be incredibly demanding.
It leads to immense burnout if you aren't supported.
Which makes sense why another student specifically praised the quick responding support desk. When an analyst is trying to untangle a nested banking relationship involving, say, a sanctioned sovereign wealth fund, knowing there is an active support system behind the training module is likely a massive psychological relief.
It is. It emphasizes that even the experts need backup when navigating these complex topics. The most effective training architectures for high-stakes environments operate as active support systems. The analyst is never truly working alone.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are listening and wondering how this deep dive into a highly specialized financial certificate applies to the broader world, here is a quick summary. The ICA Specialist Certificate in Money Laundering Risk in Correspondent Banking isn't just a piece of paper. It is a fast-paced, highly structured weapon for financial professionals to shore up one of the banking system's most vulnerable back doors.
Perfectly stated.
It's proof that the fight against financial crime is about continuously securing the digital handshakes between nations.
And the necessity of that continuous security actually brings us to a small, yet deeply profound detail embedded near the bottom of the course page.
Oh, yeah, the timer.
Yes. As you navigate the page, there is a literal ticking countdown timer. It is relentlessly counting down the days, hours, and minutes until the ICA Future of FinCrime and Compliance Summit.
Where the early bird rate saves you up to 100 pounds, by the way.
Exactly. It functions as a marketing tool, but the symbolism of that ticking clock is impossible to ignore.
It really is.
It leaves us with a final thought to mull over. If this intensive, highly detailed Level 2 certificate represents the current state of correspondent banking risks, what unseen emerging vulnerabilities will the professionals at that Future of FinCrime Summit be bracing for next?
Man, the moment the ink dries on this syllabus, the cartels are already engineering a workaround.
Precisely. In a world where money moves in milliseconds, how does the training ever truly catch up to the crime?
The getaway car has been replaced by the algorithm, and the physical vault is it's never coming back. The men and women holding the line are doing so armed with continuous intelligence, 20 CPD hours at a time.
It's a daunting task.
It absolutely is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of global financial defense. For you listening, we hope this completely rewired your perspective on what it actually takes to keep the global economy secure. Stay insanely curious, and we will see you next time.